In this video, I wanted to talk about two topics. One, what genetics are actually very beneficial for arm wrestling? Do you have the genetics that could possibly be good for the sport? Or at least what are my thoughts on the best genetics when it comes to arm wrestling for the highest potential? And two, stay to the end of the video because I want to give my prediction on the Devon Larratt versus Gennady kick vignette matchup. But before we get started, I'm doing a workout after this. So I'm gonna be taking a pre-workout and gonna be ripping up some turkestrone. I like to take 3 pills of this stuff. For those who don't know what turkestrone is, it's essentially an ecdie steroid. It helps you produce muscle output and helps you get your energy levels a little bit higher, and is also clinically proven to help protein synthesis. So if you guys want to get your hands on some of this stuff, use code Keanu15 at checkout. I'll put the link in the description below. Only use it if you want to increase your strength by 10 to 15% naturally. Pre-workout's gonna be good. So when it comes to genetics is such an interesting one, right? When I get to the table, and let's just say that I'm gripping up with someone for the first time, what is the first thing I notice? Usually it's the hand. When I grip up with someone, and this is coming from someone like myself who has larger than your average man hands, I have, obviously on camera you can't tell. Stop focusing on me. You can't tell. But I have fairly large hands with a freaking good grip, generally speaking. The first thing I recognize when I'm coming to the table with someone is the hand. When I come to grip up, and usually I'll be the first person to say, like, holy shit, dude, look at these hands you got on you. Hands are an interesting one. Forearms is another, biceps is another, and overall size, I would say. But for me, the biggest indicator of someone who has massive potential in this sport literally comes to, in my opinion, probably the hand and forearm. But if I see someone come up to the table for the first time, I'm gripping up, the hand's the first thing you're gonna recognize. So in my opinion, when it comes to arm wrestling in general, for me to recognize if you have serious potential, it's probably gonna be the hand. I've arm wrestled with so many people who have serious potential just based off hand size. So not so much that it's strong, but just the size of the hand. I remember right before this was around Halloween, Agnes and I went out for a dinner with her coworkers, and one of her coworkers who has never seen an arm wrestling match in his life, just a random dude who happened to show up, and he was with his girlfriend at the time. He must have been 6'3", just a lanky, general, weird looking guy, just like myself. And I remember just looking at him, and I saw and I'm telling you, this is not a word of a lie, his hands, just from looking, looked larger than Devon Larratt's, and he looked like an average dude who just happened to be very lanky. I have big hands, right? I swear to God, his hands must have been like somewhere over here. Like that's like another, almost a finger on top. But I just remember saying like, holy shit, like if I can get this guy into the sport, if this guy were to dedicate, he could be a fucking problem. I think out of all genetics in arm wrestling, we're talking bicep, forearm, tricep, if you even want to call that, dragging, pushing. You guys could correct me or give your opinions if you think I'm wrong. But when it comes to genetics, I believe hand is the way to go. The second thing I would say when it comes to arm wrestling genetics that I believe have a big potential would just be forearms. So many people, such as construction workers, painters, drywallers, I think drywallers could be one, concrete layers, pipe layers, any job, mechanics obviously, and I know I'm missing a ton, but any job that requires, or any career that requires extremely hard physical labor on the hands or the forearms, those people tend to have some of the craziest forearm strength or grip strength. So for me, if I'm coming up to the table and I'm arm wrestling someone new, I've never met them before, or it could be an experienced arm wrestler, sometimes I could tell just based off gripping up with them that they have crazy potential. And half the time it's people who come from very physical backgrounds. If it's someone who's doing lumber cutting trees, if it's a mechanic, if it's, you know, even a painter uses like their fingertips up and down all day, but the tendons and the forearm pump, if you're doing that every single day for your whole life, you're, that's not even genetics at that point. You're just a freak. I know I sound like a broken record, but the reality, in my opinion, is if you want to become a very good arm wrestler and you have good genetics in terms of hand and forearm, hand and forearm, you should probably go for it. I think the potential is seriously through the roof. Now, obviously, if you're just a very large dude, you're, I don't know, 6'6", 6'10", 250, 300 pounds, I think just getting in the sport in general is a very good thing because you're probably gifted from a size standpoint, which means it comes with a lot of strength. Other than that, obviously, you'll see some bodybuilders come in. You'll see people who do, well, you wouldn't get any CrossFitters really, but for the most part, you'll see bodybuilders or strength athletes, and a lot of them who come in have extremely strong or very big biceps. Biceps is an interesting one, and some people would probably be surprised by my answer of saying that biceps is not the first indicator when it comes to potential in this sport. Even though everything is a drag movement, besides pressing, biceps play, it's not, if you have a strong bicep, that's a very good thing. But in arm wrestling, it all starts on that setup. It starts with your grip. It starts with that cup. It starts with a drag. You're not immediately gonna go just directly onto your bicep. I mean, you can get to that position, but that's not really how it works. If you have strong biceps, if you have big biceps, I mean, obviously, you're well ahead of someone who doesn't have it. But that just tells me you could be possibly a very good hook puller. If you can get your hand to, I don't know, a decent strength level from an arm wrestling perspective, and you're already extremely strong in the bicep area, you have a couple minor things to touch up, a little bit of experience, and you can be a killer. The hand, it just goes back to the hand though. Everyone who you see who's elite in arm wrestling, if you're talking at a world-class level, if you're talking at a top national level, if it's at a provincial level, regional level, whatever the case is, or you're just a random dude who's arm wrestled with your friends who's seeing this video for the first time, and you can't figure out why you keep losing your matches, well, look at your hand. Look how strong is your hand compared to someone who is always beating you. There's this funny thing too, outside of arm wrestling, I remember when I was arm wrestling my friends up in college, high school, and even to this day, this conversation stumbled upon me about a year and a half ago. And it was coming from someone who didn't arm wrestle professionally, but liked to arm wrestle his buddies and was always winning. And then he was like, oh, there's this one guy who I ended up losing to, that ended up being a little bit stronger than me, and I never lose. And then he's like, this is my trick. What I do is I come up like this, I get a good grip, I go over the thumb, and then I squeeze my forearm just like this. And then he's doing this movement. He's like, oh yeah. It's kind of funny because I feel like when we all start arm wrestling, that's exactly what we do. I remember being in college and I'd arm wrestle my friends, and they'd be like, dude, you're so strong. And I remember my train of thought at the time was, okay, the trick is you got to take your elbow. It has to be super close to your lat, not over here, because there was no knowledge of that. It was like you have to be right here. You have to be close to your shoulder. You got to squeeze, get a forearm pump, and then you just go and you pin. And theoretically speaking, that's kind of what you do now, but obviously at a much more advanced level. Anyways, I thought that was kind of funny because I'm like, dude, I've passed by there too. I'm sure everyone who is not competing at a maybe provincial level, national, well, not national level, anyone who hasn't actually competed in the sport who's thinking on getting in, it's very likely you come up to your friends, you grip, and then you just go to the side. And anyways, with all the information that's out on YouTube nowadays and all that's out on the internet, I'm sure you know someone who arm wrestles. I'm sure you know of someone who knows someone who's doing it, or you've just seen someone online. But yeah, the information's out there. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if that's kind of the mentality of now. And this leads us to the end of the video. The pre-workout's starting to hit right now. We have the Devon Larratt versus Gennady Kickvinia matchup coming. Who do I think is going to win? Now, if you do recall, Gennady did win. It was a close one last time, but Gennady did win over Devon. How do I see it going this time? In my personal opinion, I think Devon's going to close the gap severely on this one, and I can just see Devon absolutely steamrolling Gennady. I was just listening to a Devon Larratt video, and he was saying he's coming in the strongest he's ever have. That is saying something, because you got to consider when he went up against Levon, how strong he was. I mean, he was, the first time, obviously, it was extremely unhealthy strong. The second time, he was lighter, but stronger. And then the matches he's had since. Now, obviously, Gennady's been on a little bit of a run himself, but if I was a betting man, which you can't even bet on this apparently anymore because Devon's maxed out the stake, but I don't see Devon losing one round in this. I think Devon's going to be able to toy with him. Now, Gennady is no walk in the park. Gennady comes with as much endurance as you can get in the sport, and he comes strong as a bull. I mean, everyone knows Gennady is absolutely no joke, but I just think for this time around, he's going to pick up and clean up house when it comes to Gennady Kickvinia. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, peace.